GM, good morning. Welcome to the Milk Road Show, the daily crypto show that won't break your heart, ghost your texts, or tell you it's just bad timing. I'm your host, Jay Hamilton. It's Wednesday, June the 4th, and we have been talking a lot recently about the crypto, or specifically the Bitcoin treasury strategy for public companies. This is a growing trend. You all know MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor and what he's doing. We're seeing many more companies start to do this with Bitcoin. And we're also seeing companies do it with Ethereum and Solana. So I bet you didn't know. I'm sure you guys have seen a little bit this happening in Ethereum and Solana, but it's actually a growing trend. And today we're joined by the CEO and CTO of Soul Strategies, which you guessed it, is one of the leaders of this strategy with Solana. So we're going to jump into a discussion around why would you do the corporate treasury strategy with Ethereum or Solana? What is the opportunity there? What's the outlook for Solana? Because these guys are deep in the Solana ecosystem. What's going on with institutions and banks? How quickly are they coming into the space? We talk all the time about the institutions are here, the institutions are here, but how many are here? And are they actually here? And what do they understand? The Leah and Max, who are joining us today, are talking every day to these banks, to these institutions, and they really have great insight about where we are now and how much further we have to go in terms of institutional adoption. Before we jump in, I told you guys this yesterday. I'm so excited about this. We're celebrating everybody who is still listening to the show right now because y'all survived the dip, okay? And surviving the dip is not easy in crypto. A lot of people got washed out in the past 6 months because you couldn't handle tariffs. You couldn't handle the macro situation. So we want to give you all a free t-shirt. All you got to do is go pro this week and you can get your free pullback survivor t-shirt to show all your friends that you ain't soft and you got the mental fortitude to last. Today's episode is brought to you by Ledn. Get cash without selling your Bitcoin. It's also brought to you by Definitive, the leading multi-chain trading terminal trusted by funds, DAOs, and pro traders. Without further ado, Leah and Max, welcome to the Milk Road Show.
Thanks for having us, Jay. By the way, I took a note that afterwards I need to do the post for the t-shirt. Like I can't forget that one. So I had to take a note on my notepad.
We'll hook you up. We'll hook you up with a t-shirt. You're still here. You survived the pullback. You know, it's actually one of the things that I don't know how you guys feel about this, but we're a crypto investment show, and one of the big differences between this is where I was planning to start the show, but one of the big differences between crypto investing and Leah, you have experience in TradFi as well, is you really have to develop this mental fortitude to manage the emotions and the stress of crypto because the volatility is just, it's so difficult. And people don't appreciate that when they get here. They think up only, especially if a lot of people make the mistake of coming in during the euphoric stage and it's up only for like a few weeks or a month. Like if you came in November or December, which a lot of people did last year, and then it's down only for like 6 months and you're like, ooh, this sucks. This hurts. So it's very difficult. So we think it's important to celebrate that. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts to add about that, or I can ask my first interview question.
Definitely agreed there. I think we've all been there and done that of just, seeing portfolios go up and down, big numbers, double-digit percentages when you're trying to go to bed at night. So you don't have that in many other industries, but it just makes the industry fun, So we all love crypto, so it's fun.
Look, I think if you've been in long enough, you have to admit to the fact that you definitely FOMO'd at one point and called it wrong. You probably lost a little Bitcoin. Okay, I admit, absolutely. Either, my Trezor broke, definitely been the case, sent to the wrong place. Gotta admit to that. And then that, who's been in it long enough. They've been through the cycles. You've hit it wrong. You've lost some Bitcoin,
But you're still here though, right? That's the thing, and that's what it's so important to celebrate just being here, right? Especially right now. Like I know, our portfolios aren't at all-time highs. It's easy to, doesn't feel like it's a time to celebrate, but I think surviving pullbacks is a big thing to celebrate. Anyways, okay, let's zoom out for a second. Obviously, we want to talk about Soul Strategies and what you guys are doing as a public company, acquiring Solana and that corporate treasury that you guys have got there. But first, let's just start a little bit higher picture. What's the investment thesis? Why are all of these public companies doing this playbook right now? And I think that specifically what our audience is going to know is why doing it with Solana or with Ethereum. Like we tend to get it with Bitcoin because that's been happening with MicroStrategy and it's proven and it works. But doing with Solana or Ethereum is fairly new. Why doing it with those assets?
Yeah, maybe I'll start if that's okay, Max, and then I'll toss it to you. And maybe helpful if we tell our backgrounds as well, but because I think it lends into why we're so bullish on Solana. But I think that what's key to understand is actually the company's story. So I'm going to back it up just a little bit because we were effectively the first MicroStrategy. So Sol Strategies was Cypherpunk Holdings. Okay. So it was publicly listed on the CSE in 2018. It was the first pubco in North America to convert its treasury to Bitcoin and make meaningful Bitcoin venture investments. Back then, it was actually very privacy focused. So for the Bitcoiners on here, Samurai, Wasabi, Engrave, etc. So very much a Bitcoin exposure play all the way back in 2018. After that, there was an interesting opportunity and also difficulty to continue to remain relevant when the ETFs came out for a Bitcoin specific narrative pubco. So my background a little bit, and then I'll come into how we got into Sol Strategies. So I have been in the Bitcoin asset management industry for maybe way too long, about 9 years. If people remember Lucid, so Lucid Investment Strategies was one of the first RIAs that specialized in investing in GBTC. So one of the first securities in the US and allocating to their discretionary accounts. And then we also taught. So to your point about, different cycles, it was also a lot of education. We put out a book on how to consider your time horizons for investing and divesting in Bitcoin and GBTC. After that, co-founded and ran Valkyrie Investments. We launched some of the first ETFs and then came into this seat as the CEO of Sol Strategies. So going back to that really quickly and why we turned into this. So last year, it seemed as if when the board asked if I wanted to be the CEO, and I've been on the board of Cypherpunk Holdings for 4 years, the writing was on the wall that there was no opportunities to invest in Solana in North American public markets. None. The ETFs weren't out yet. There was no other public companies that were focused on Solana. You had no direct exposure. I know in this interview, we're going to get into also how other banks are trying to, integrate how you can buy spot or not. But last year there was nothing. So we said, okay, there's a huge opportunity here. The market wants it. We're bullish Solana, but this is a little different. We never wanted to be a treasury play ever. And we're still not. And we're very proud of that. So not only did we do our material name and strategy change from Cypherpunk Holdings to Sol Strategies in September, sorry, I have my dog with me, but we also launched our validator business in September as well. So we've been running our validator business for quite a while. So excited to get into the treasury styles and what we've seen, because a lot of investors have seen us as a treasury style, but in our minds, we've always been running a tech company. So it's very interesting what's going on in the market, but I'll toss to you, Max, and also what you're thinking and seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think your question was around, different treasuries and Solana and Ethereum and things like that. And, I can tell you our view is really that Solana is going to capture the most economic activity of any blockchain out there. And we do that in many different ways, right? So there's other companies making different bets there, things like that. But our view is really this, is that Solana is going to win. And to put that, to talk about why, I think, if you really look at most major metrics, right, like DEX volumes, active addresses, transactions, things like that, Solana is through and through the winner, right? And we get really excited about the potential of Solana because we think it's going to capture so much economic activity, especially with things that, maybe we'll talk about later with tokenization and real world assets and things like that. So what we are really doing is, yes, we hold Sol on our treasury. That is big part of our business. And, but that's more of us doubling down on this thesis of Solana winning, where we also run, one of the biggest validator operations in all of Solana, where if you're to sum up all of our stake, I think we're in the top 20 right now in terms of every operator on the network. And, for us, we're really trying to capture a lot of that economic activity that will come in the form of transaction fees, which we get from running validators on the network. So that's really our thesis. You know, and we really want, like, our thesis is that we think Solana is going to win. We want to have a bunch of SOL, and we also want to position ourselves in a way where that when more assets come on chain and all this economic activity comes to Solana, we're going to capture as much as possible.
Fantastic. Okay. Few things to break down here. First, I just want to double click, Leah, on what you said, and Max, you gave some more color there of the difference that you see between Soul Strategies and the playbook that you're running versus the MicroStrategy with Playbook. Explain to us that difference, because it's a little bit nuanced, but I want to make sure that everybody gets that.
Yeah, maybe I'll go thesis, and then Max, you can go into kind of the economics of even how it works. So it kind of comes back to my ETF days, actually. And what was really interesting to me is in 2023, we had a Bitcoin miners ETF, and it saw immense flows, immense. And it was the best performing non-levered ETF in the United States in 2023. But the weird part about it is that's when ETH was approved, so ETH futures. And you had in the market leveraged, inverse, you know, cap weighted blended, Bitcoin ETH, MicroStrategy, derivatives on MicroStrategy, the futures market, all these different things. And everyone said that would cannibalize the Bitcoin miners that were publicly traded. And it wasn't the case. So not only into the ETFs, but if you saw the flow into, you know, CleanSpark, Marathon, the top miners, you saw a lot of flow. So for me, it was always very interesting knowing that the ETFs for Solana would always come out at one point to create a company that also had the same picks and shovels thesis that investors could understand. The reason a lot of institutional investors and allocators like miners is because they can do fundamental analysis on it. It slots into their models, it slots into their research. They can say if it's a buy or a sell or a hold, but they can use the tools that they already know versus some of the spot products or the ETFs. They need to really digest and talk about how they feel about the market cap and the currency and all these different things. So it's just different analysis. And I'm not sure if your investors know or your listeners, they probably do. Most of the ETFs still aren't on the platforms, right? So you can't buy it on a lot of the platforms, even in the United States, even IBIT. And you have Vanguard, who just came out again saying, nope, we're not going to invest in any of our models still. But they've been a holder of Marathon for a long time. So it was important from a thesis perspective to be accretive, so that when the ETFs came out, that we were another opportunity for investors to look at. We were the tech company, and you have the ETFs, and you have the futures, and you have these different options, and we were trying to run a well-run business. So just like setting the stage of why we always wanted to be different and be tech was to also show those markets, those investors who like picks and shovels, who understand it, who understood Bitcoin miners, who got all that. You know, we wanted to go and build that same type of structure and company. So I'll toss it to Max, because then it does go into the fact that, yes, from the other perspective, we're accumulating a heck ton of SOL, right? And we always have been. And that's also crucial to the strategy. But that's because we see that as doubling down, right? So for the Bitcoin miners as well, they do massive MicroStrategy type of convertible debt raises to keep accumulating Bitcoin on their balance sheet, yet grow as a business as well, right? Marathon, CleanSpark, Bitdeer. I think most of the miners have started doing this, but Marathon definitely led the way. So that's also why we are very interested in that too.
Would you say, and Max, I want to go to you on economics here, because I think you're going to get some more detail here that we're all looking for. But would you say then that Soul Strategies is more akin to a Bitcoin, to Marathon, to a Bitcoin mining public company than it is to a MicroStrategy?
Yes, I absolutely would. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And now the extreme difference that your listeners already know, that, you know, Max will speak to, is that there's a lot more fun things than we can do than just hold Bitcoin, right? Because of the native staking, and because we run our own validators, and because one of our validators is the top APY on the entire Solana network. You know, we're able to then just continue to, you know, use that kind of leveraged wheel of taking the SOL that we can accumulate through fundraises, post it on our validators, and make money on both sides of the spectrum of running a validator business with rewards, as well as, that APY that, from the stake. So, that's where the difference lies in a marathon is, making money, but also that the treasury is accretive.
Right. Yeah, it's programmable money versus Bitcoin is not programmable money,
Right.
Which is one of the key points as to sort of my first question of why this can work with Ethereum and Solana in a different way than it can with Bitcoin. Okay, Max, explain the economics to us, but do it in the you're talking to a 5-year-old type of way, please, not the Max deep technical economic mind type of way.
Cool. Absolutely. So the economics is really this, right? Is, Leah talked about her background in Bitcoin, which speaks for itself. And, I came from like the Bitcoin space, like I had some open like source contributions to Bitcoin, Lightning, things like that. Like I love Bitcoin, right? And like, this isn't talking badly about anything like about Bitcoin because I actually love it. And so does Leah. But, like if you just like look at the facts, Bitcoin, you can't really get native yield on that. Like, and what do I mean by that? If I'm giving my 5-year-old definition, I might have to go like a little bit older than that, excuse me. But, with dollars, you can put them, in say like a CD or something, right? And you could get yield back. On Bitcoin, you can't really do that in a native way. Like, yes, there's other companies that you can do that with, but like nothing really exists on chain. On Solana and Ethereum as well. But I'm just going to say this: I'm much more bullish on Solana than I am on Ethereum, and I don't really.
We'll come back to that question later, but
yeah,
keep going.
I'll keep it spicy, but on Solana, because screw Ethereum right now, I'm just kidding. But on Solana you can stake, and what staking means is you can get yield off your SOL. What does that mean for a treasury company like ours versus MicroStrategy? Is that for us, we can stake our SOL and we can actually get yield off that. So, we are earning more SOL, like from the SOL we already have, versus a company that's doing a treasury strategy in Bitcoin where, if they want to get more Bitcoin, they have to issue debt in some way, raise money, whatever, to go out and buy it. And like, yes, a treasury company doing it on every asset will probably typically do that. However, when you're able to stake it, you're able to get SOL or like the asset, but let's just talk about Solana, SOL at a cheaper price. And that's really attractive because you're leveraging the treasury that you already have, right? So, on top of the treasury that we have, we stake it to our own validators, which is like a huge source of the revenue that we make. And I'll keep it at that for right now. We can dive in anywhere we want.
I mean, it is one of the most obvious benefits to this strategy on a Solana or an Ethereum, a smart contract platform, is the ability to stake. Imagine Saylor could stake his Bitcoin and get yield on it. Like that would just be, I mean, what a huge unlock that would be. So it feels quite obvious. Okay, let's talk about. I want to stick with Soul Strategies a little bit more, but then I want to dive into your more outlook on Solana. You guys recently did your earnings report and you've announced that you're going to do another raise, I think about $1 billion. Talk us through your recent earnings reports, what came out of that, highlights, and then this raise that you're planning.
Big questions. So our earnings call was actually on Monday, and then the financials were released on Friday. So very fresh. And I think what's interesting, we put a lot of work into the MD&A, the management discussion analysis, of just hoping that everyone could really understand our business. Because to your point, now there's other companies that are very specifically focused on treasury strategy. And again, for us, it's growing the validator business. It's also accumulating as much SOL as possible in a prudent manner that doesn't dilute our shareholders inappropriately. So we are raising very differently. We think the most smart manner as well. So happy to go into that base shelf prospectus that you were talking about that provides that ability to raise $1 billion. And then we also, closed a credit facility of another $500 million. We have another credit facility of $25 million. So we have a lot of flexibility, but it is very important for investors to look under the hood of what each of these raises are for all the different companies in the market, because they all create different types of sell pressure. So we are not raising willy-nilly, but I do, DYOR on some of this stuff. So, okay, going into MD&A and what we talked about in earnings. So definitely we can jump more into that. what's important, I think, for everybody to know that I'm really proud of and would love if Max spoke to a little bit more is also just the robustness of our validator business, which I think people don't understand. Typically, you think, all right, which large clients do you have, that makes you a more powerful validator business? We have over 5,000 unique wallets staked to our different validators. So we have 4 validators, and then we run a white label validator for Pudgy Penguins. That is a heck of a lot of unique wallets, and that's primarily retail. So we've already started, very large partnerships. 2 public companies are exclusively staking with us. Conversations with ETF providers, as you can imagine, given my background, but large institutions. But if you can imagine the stickiness of retail that have been with us for years, because we acquired Cogent, which had a massive community, strong Discord, Orangefin, which is where we got Max, same thing, strong community. And then Lane, which was one of the largest and very respected validator on the network, also same thing, large community around it, very respected. So there's a couple things I hope people know is just that was also in the earnings, because we wanted to speak to the power of that for what we believe is, the longevity of our business and our ability to grow, because we're not just this treasury strategy, buy us like a meme stock. We have a 5-year type of plan type of company. Is just there's so many retail stakers that have stayed with us. Now we're getting institutions, but we're different. We also, Max is actively involved with the developer community. He launched a staking app. We have different tools. We have dashboards. We actually publicly provide our unaudited revenue every day, real time on Dune.
No way.
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
That is super interesting. You're a public company, publicly sharing your
It's all on chain.
anyone that is fascinating. Which feels like, why do we wait? I can't wait until we don't have to wait for earnings reports, right? Like, it's so ridiculous. When you live in crypto, you don't think in that way, right? Where, it's earnings season. Oh, it's another quarter. Okay, let's all show up to these earnings calls and listen to them, tell us that their numbers look good when, they're trying to hide whatever's going, but it's like, that's amazing that you guys do that. I love that. Okay. I want to, Max, do you have anything to add there? Because I want to ask another question, but you can jump into.
Yeah, I'll just say this. I'll keep it short. I think just to piggyback off Leah, our validator, our validator business is, really thriving and something that's unique. And, I want to get into the Dune dashboard a little bit, but, if you were to sum up all of our stake right now, across all of our validators, it would put us in the top 20 validator operators, on the entire Solana network, bigger than some of the biggest centralized exchanges out there, and it's really about that. We want to do well for Solana, and we've attracted plenty of retail, like we said, but also institutional as well through partnerships that we've announced, and so we're just continuing to grow that business, and one of the really cool things, in my opinion, that Leah just touched upon is the ability to share revenue, share unaudited revenue on daily granularity. And it's pretty cool to see too, just because it seemed like you were pretty excited, but typically before our earnings calls, this is one of the top trending dashboards on all of Dune, which is really, really cool to see because people get to go really nitty gritty into it. And it's pretty cool. Right. And it shows that, we're just and our treasury is also in here too, which is a proof of reserves type system that centralized exchanges do. We are trying to be not only the top, Solana based infrastructure company out there doing staking, but we also truly want to be the most, not only the most transparent company in crypto, but the most transparent company in the world. And I think we're there. Go and point me to some other company that can go and do this, or point me to another treasury company even, you can't, not a lot of them do. Right. So we're really dedicated to that as well.
So I got the Dune. Everybody that's watching video, if you're listening in, I'll do my best to explain. I got the Dune dashboard up here. This is what you're referring to. Yeah,
correct.
I've got the right one. Okay.
Yep.
Talk us through that. What are the? I've got aggregate revenue is the first one I stopped on here. But which chart's the most interesting? And give us some numbers.
Yeah, well, I would start at the top if you don't mind, just scrolling to the top, because we'll just go through it really quickly. But it's not full screen. But look at that second one. Sorry, where it says total stake. And then just mouse over that last value, in that line chart. Yeah, if you just go like the latest one. So we have 3.5 million SOL delegated to all of our validators. Keep scrolling down just like a little bit.
How much of that is your SOL in your strategy versus
keep
third
scrolling.
party?
It shows you right there.
Keep somewhere.
Yeah, keep scrolling a little bit more down. If it's full, it looks better in full screen, but keep going. Keep going. There's right here. So if you look, the orange is other people's and the purples is ours. And this really shows that, most of our stake is actually coming from other people versus us. And this is a metric like I'm really proud of, and I know Leah is really proud of, right? Because it's other people coming and staking with us, providing like a good service. So, we have plenty to do there, and we are not even close to everything we want to do. But then you could break down you can see all of our revenue, which is like the one you were talking about, and then you could also break it down. Like, so this actually breaks it down between like our staking revenue, which is like coming from our treasury, versus our validator revenue, which is like not only including our treasury like staking, but also other people's. So like, and like it goes even further granularity, like by validator, by block rewards, by MEV, like you can get as nerdy as you want in this. And if anyone has anything they want,
but this is amazing. So like here, I can see your revenue this is daily, right?
Yeah. And so this is an epoch. Just one thing I want to make clear to your audience. It does it by epoch. Really simply, an epoch is 2 days.
2 days. Okay.
Roughly, very roughly.
So you see your every 2 days revenue unaudited. This is and you can see it breaking. And what really stands out to me here is that it's pretty even, almost 50-50. It changes based on the day, but your staking revenue and your validator revenue are two very strong revenue streams, which, like, again, if we look at the Bitcoin treasury playbook, they don't have this, right? They don't have either. Most companies wouldn't have either of these forms of revenue. Their revenue is all based upon Bitcoin price go up, basically, right? Exactly. So this is, you're not even reliant on. So let me ask the obvious question. This is a little bit aside from where we were, but one thing that I did want to ask at some point in this interview was like the risk, right? Because a lot of people are worried, obviously, about all of these treasury companies, accumulating, leveraging up on their whatever token they're looking to accumulate. And what if we have a big drop in price, right? We're talking about very volatile assets, right? And there's the potential of, okay, could one of these companies, I'm not worried about MicroStrategy blowing up, but on the Bitcoin side, I'm pretty sure a few of these companies are going to blow up in the next, whenever this bull run ends and we have a dip, they're going to blow up. But for you guys, that, from what I can see, that risk isn't here as much because you have such strong revenues from an actual profitable business, it looks like.
Yeah, I think Leah can touch on that, right? But I think that's like one of like the biggest thing. I'll pass it over to Leah here. But yeah, like exactly, right? Like you just kind of nailed it there, Jay. Like, exactly. Like we want to be like a business that is actually making real revenue. And not only just that, but like we also want to provide like real value to Solana as well, right? And like, yes, I get that like people want like others to like buy their bags and things like that. But like we are focused on like building a profitable business. And like we are so bullish on Solana that our holding SOL in our treasury is just us doubling down on that, right? So like that's really what I say. I'll pass it over to Leah to add like a bunch of cool things as well.
No, cool. I was about to talk about really uncool corporate things, so thanks, man.
The nerdy stuff's cool on this show. We respect the nerds. We're all nerds. Let's be proud of that,
Yes.
That's true. No one that's been in crypto long enough isn't like absolutely a nerd. Like,
proud of it.
I was about to admit to something. All right, I'll just admit to it. I definitely have a couple Magic the Gathering cards over there. So like, I admitted. No, Max is absolutely right. And I think that therefore, if listeners want to, understand where we're at, our core business is our validator business, but everything else that we do from technology to asset accumulation is to feed into that validator business. So as an example, maybe Max, you could talk to it, but we're pushing and aiming to be the first public company in the world to tokenize some of our shares on Solana. And we've come out with that publicly. We're partnered with Superstate and pushing hard on that initiative. Now, we think that it is the future of finance, but hands down, that is the tokenized stocks are the future of finance. And we believe that with all our heart. We believe that it needs to be on Solana as well. Full belief. But also it's interesting. Not only are we hoping to then be, avant-garde at the forefront of those types of sophisticated, efforts on Solana, but again, it feeds back. The more activity on the network, the more people that are interested and excited and using Solana feeds back to the validators. So that's how we see it. So whether it's launching the staking app, and maybe Max could talk to that, because actually we are getting customers through that, but really any support we could give to Solana and the Solana Foundation and community, we still see that from a capitalistic perspective as accretive to the business, but also from, more of a strategic perspective, we see our goodwill as being our value differentiator. And the fact that we really care is kind of the biggest value differentiator that we see as well. So kind of just building all this tech and everything kind of goes into that strategy. But Max, maybe like you could talk about some of the tech that you've already built.
Yeah, well, I think I just wanted to piggyback on Leah there too. Like the tokenization piece is so key. And, like that's one of the things.
You mean tokenized stocks, Max? Is that what tokenized equities?
Tokenized stocks, yes, but I view that as a subset, but I view that as the largest subset of the overall set. So I do think that like tokenization is just super promising, but let's focus on tokenized equities. Just to make it simple, but we announced our intention to be the first. Like we were the first to launch, first to announce our intent to be the first company in the world to natively issue its stock on Solana. Not just a derivative, not like a wrapper, but true native stock on Solana, and that's really promising for, say, a company like ours, who, yes, we operate like a treasury, but we also are operating a validator business, because the more economic activity that happens on the network, the more like a company like ours, or really just like us, like amongst other validators, I mean to say, the more revenue they're going to generate, right? Obviously, depending, like, stake is at a sufficient size and things like that, right? But, if you look at just like, DEX volumes, things like that, Solana is just absolutely crushing it. And that's with like, like not like the greatest assets out there. Like, it's mostly meme coins right now, right? But like, I view that as like the noise, but the real signal, like, in my opinion, is that Solana is capable of processing like that type of volume, which was like 250 billion in January, which is like real volume. And just to put things into perspective, sorry, I know I'm rambling here, but the day that the Trump meme coin launched, Solana DEXs did double the volume of both Coinbase and Kraken combined, the two biggest US cryptocurrency exchanges. The two biggest US cryptocurrency exchanges, right? And that shows that like the tech is really here. If you think about like all the advantages that like tokenized stock can bring, and like that's like our intention to natively like to issue our stock on chain. If you think like listen, like you and I were here chatting like live, in real time, but sometimes to buy a stock, it takes up to 3 days. I mean, it's ridiculous to think about, it's ridiculous to think about like how hard it is for people outside certain jurisdictions to get access to these equities, like these are things that I think Solana and just like tokenized equities in general can really solve. So we're really focused on that. Last thing I'll say, we're really focused on building just like a lot of different tech. One of the things we launched was a mobile app dedicated to Solana staking. It's pretty cool to see all the growth that's been there. It's called OrangeFin on iOS, Android, and Solana Mobile. We love Solana Mobile.
Sorry, who's that for? That's for retailers to.
Yeah,
what's the product? Just give us the TLDR of the product.
TLDR is it's designed to be the easiest experience you can possibly have to stake Sol, right? So it's a dedicated app to staking Sol. You
guys want to check that out? We'll throw the link in the show notes for everybody who wants to take a look at that. Sorry, Max, keep going.
No, that's really it. We have some exciting announcements to announce later on that, but that's it.
You guys are cooking. I love it. I think that I don't want to go too deep on tokenized stocks because we only have so much time and we could do an entire episode on that. But two things I just have to mention quickly. One is we did an episode with Sam Andrew from North Island Island Ventures. I don't know if you know him, but they're deep in the Solana ecosystem, VC fund. And we were talking all about Solana DeFi and the opportunity in Solana DeFi. But he had one of the best takes I've heard recently, which is that Solana has amazing infrastructure and crap assets, right? And then you have NASDAQ and other public markets that have crap infrastructure, but but amazing assets. And so what's going to happen when you put those two things together? You're going to have a system that has both amazing infrastructure and amazing assets and offers 24/7 global trading. Like, people don't really, I don't think we see what is tokenized equities is going to be absolutely massive, absolutely massive. It's just so slow right now. And we keep hearing announcements. I mean, Kraken announced that they're doing tokenized equities on Solana for like Apple and Tesla. And I heard the announcement, but honestly, I haven't seen really much more. I don't know if it's actually happening or how much flows are happening. You guys mentioned that you're the first to actually do it fully on chain. So it just feels like we're in this like messy in between where we're still trying to figure out. Plus, I think a lot of people are waiting for the market structure bill out of the US. So I don't know if you guys have a take on for you, when will you launch Strategies as a tokenized equity? Is that like, what is the timing for that? Because my big question is, when is all of this going to happen, right? Like, is that this year or is this years away?
Insert all fun compliance disclaimers possible on when. Definitely working hard. So Superstate is a SEC, SEC registered transfer agency. The OSC is still getting caught up to speed, but the SEC is taking a lot of meetings on it and trying to understand tokenization and what's allowed and not allowed, specifically for DeFi. And tokenized equities, tokenized funds, these already exist. But the interesting element will be when these stocks can actually integrate and be involved with DeFi applications, right? Mm-hmm. So that's still a TBD. I'll rest it with the regulators in Washington, D.C., but definitely pushing forward on our side. And, I just want to reiterate one of Max's point, and it seems like you already talked about it on your shows, but what's so fascinating to me is just the fact that an investor could have common shares, as they should. It's not a derivative. Like, that is the coolest freaking thing, is like, it's not a derivative. You're actually a full shareholder. It's just in tokenized form. And that is so novel. And
because is it right now, that is the way it is, right? Like, for the current tokenized equity, it's just derivatives. You don't actually have the common share where you have the voting rights or whatever the rights are that come with the common share. Yeah. That's and so how I know you can't. I'm going to ask the same question again. Is it months away or is it years away? Let me put it like that.
What do you think, Max?
I think it's, I think it's somewhere in between those. Okay. Yeah, I don't think, if all goes well, I'm going to steal Leah's thing, insert all compliance disclaimers as well, like, whatever. But if all goes well, I don't think it's that far off.
Yeah. Okay. I think so too. Okay. I think we're getting closer under this administration and with this SEC. I think we're getting much closer. And they just came out with regulation guidance on staking. And, if you guys look after the show, I'd recommend looking at Lowenstein's and Solana Foundation put in Solana Open, a framework to the SEC on tokenization. I think it's Solana Open, something like that. But I'll send you the link. Really interesting about a framework to do it as well. So
I don't think it's years away. Is what I'll say.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. I want to talk about Solana, but I also need to. My producer will yell at me if this show goes too long. And I actually, I'm definitely going to make this show go too long. A Solana ETF. We haven't even talked about that. Let's just talk quickly about the ETF, because two questions I have around the ETF. One is that scary for you guys? Because that's a way for, as you said initially, your play was to be the public market access to Solana, to get exposure to Solana. Obviously, the ETF provides another way to get exposure to Solana. So are you worried for Sol Strategies in terms of the impact that has for your investors and the interest in you? And then the other question is just like any takes or thoughts you have around the Solana ETF, when it'll happen, will it include staking, that sort of thing?
Sure. I'll go there first, and I'll be nice and fiery too. No. So in Canada, they approved stake Sol ETFs earlier this year. They're trading well. That's Purpose, Evolve, 3IQ, and Galaxy CI. So they're running really well. Then you had obviously Sol Futures that started trading pretty soon afterwards, right during DAS. And that was volatility shares. Sorry, they had CME paper futures being traded, and then you had an ETF holding those paper futures from volatility shares, and a leveraged one as well. So you actually already have sold products in the market, and I think that they're very fair priced, actually. So to your question, when are we going to get the holy grail of spot, right? And then stake SOL? I think for spot, it's not too far from now. I think regulators are, under this administration, it's just a different game. They're able to see how comfortable these are able to actually trade. It's a question of who are they going to pick first? And then they did come out with guidance on, who they believe, what tokens they believe are securities and not. That was about 2 days ago. So I think we'll see that fairly soon. And then after that, I think, staking still needs to be considered, and likely ETH will go first, of course. And again, that's also because there's so much precedent around the world in different jurisdictions for so many years for these staked products, have been running comfortably. Now, I will note for this audience, like there is a big difference between an ETF and an ETP. And in Europe, typically they're nodes. And here we trade them very differently. I think, and then I'll stop being granular, but I know your audience is more sophisticated. There's still much to go on the current structure of the spot products of the ETFs, being cash create to in-kind, that can actually develop a little bit more systematically before that even happens to make it even better. But I think we'll see it in short order. Am I scared? Absolutely not. As mentioned, right? I think that it's only a net positive. If we could have BlackRock's army out there talking about the merits of SOL and buying a SOL product, and those investors can't actually access it on their platform, thank you so much. Yes, please. Like, absolutely. So, we hope to work with all those asset managers when the time comes, because it all comes down to education. And that's the only barrier is, all right, I'm first. And again, to your point, yes, like most investors still aren't allocating. There's this huge swaths that are still not allocating. They don't know how, they're out. Risk parameters have been hit. People forget that you actually can't have an asset be too successful either. It's true, you'd blow out of the risk parameter of that asset. So that's when you see rebalancing towards the end of a quarter. So there's just a lot of different elements and a lot of the blockchain thematic ETFs. And you're looking at billions and billions of dollars, even in the US, from ARK to Block, Amplify, VanEck, Skybridge, et cetera. Those hold equities. So there does need to be and there is a place to be friends of an ETF and an ETF issuer and a company that's also, thematically running in that same sector. So I see only a net positive. Where I'm going to be fiery is if we keep seeing stonks come out that are inappropriately run with inappropriate capital and used as a vehicle for insiders to sell the heck out of their shares and do nothing underneath the SPAC shell. That's very dangerous for the industry. ETFs I like.
Okay, I want to wrap with your going back to your point earlier, Max, of Solana better than Ethereum. Why Solana? I would love to hear both your answers on this. Why Solana? Why are you so bullish on Solana? What's your outlook for them becoming and being the leading smart contract blockchain?
Absolutely. Well, I didn't get a chance to talk about like my background, but like I'm not going to get into that too much. But I will want to say this, that when I started in crypto, I actually I started at Kraken, a really tiny company called Kraken at the time. We were 10 engineers and 100 people. And back then, the only real business, this was like early 2017, like before that bull run, whatever, we were like a small scrappy company that was trying to figure it out. And being able to trade crypto was like cool. So we're like, hey, we'll see if this crypto thing works out. And centralized exchanges played like a really integral part, and still for the most part do. But it was really when I found Solana and I made my first real trade on Jupiter, was really when I got like super excited for Solana. And this is going to tie into your question, like why Solana versus Ethereum. Is that like really like from a technical level, just like talking like high level terms, I guess. But, Solana's block time is 400 milliseconds relative to Ethereum's, which is 12 seconds. Okay. And, when like in the early days of centralized exchanges, they were, like it was pretty common for like ad order latency, which is just like really how long it takes you to place an order, to be in the hundreds of milliseconds. To be in like the tens of seconds is so archaic. And the reason I say that is that there are just applications that are possible on Solana that are not on Ethereum, and almost all of them have to do with trading. And I think because of that, that is why we see the data that we do. Like, it's not surprising at all that we see the data that we see today, which is just Solana DEX volumes crushing it. It's not only just the technical stuff, it's the user experience, right? It's like, I don't know if you ever tried to use listen, someone in the audience might have tried to use an Ethereum layer 2, and you might have some token on Base, but you don't have ETH there, but you have ETH on Arbitrum. And, you need to bridge from Arbitrum to Base, but you can't do that. You got to go back to the layer 1. The UX just sucks, in my opinion, right? And, for Solana, it's really just that, the UX is great. We saw this with retail, where plenty of retail onboarded directly into Phantom, where Phantom, during the peak of the bull run, had more downloads than Coinbase, by the way, which is absolutely insane. And most of those people were trading on Solana, right? So in short, it's really this. It's that the block times are just faster, which just enables different types of applications to happen on chain. And they're gonna get even faster soon too, with Alpenglow, which we don't have enough time to get into. But also the UX is it's just so much easier to use Solana than it is Ethereum. And together, there's even other verticals like DPIN, where you see Helium, which now has 1 million daily active users or something, right? It's just that there's applications that are possible on Solana that are just not possible on Ethereum. So I'll end there.
I like that you shouted out Helium. Big fans of them, and DPIN does not get nearly enough attention that it deserves.
I agree.
There will be a big DPIN moment. And if you look at the numbers of DPIN, it's just incredible what they're doing. But yet nobody in crypto talks about DPIN at all. It's not discussed. Anyways, Leah, what's your take on Solana?
I did buy my first Sol when it came out, and not much, but came out on Kraken and staked it back in the day. So I have been following at least the token. But to be honest, and this is probably not what most people say, and Max always laughs at me, but I actually started getting really bullish in Solana when I learned about Pump Fun.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're honest. That's good.
Yeah.
Nobody would say that because they don't want to be caught saying that. But yeah, tell us why.
I'm okay saying it.
Yeah.
And the reason is it really reminded me of early days Bitcoin exchanges and marketplaces. And so when I was seeing its craziness and getting a headache from so much happening at once, it really did remind me of early Bitcoin marketplaces and exchanges. And so knowing all the pillars that I already knew about fast, easy, cheap, strong team, it honestly was really exciting. And I could see the amount of enthusiasm, interest, and just that it has a ways to go. And it's still such a nascent chain. I mean, crypto is still early. Bitcoin, I think, has solidified where it's planning on being as a store value asset. But the rest of Solana and the rest of the chains, they're still so early and figuring themselves out. And so to see that type of enthusiasm and craziness, it just made me feel like I'm getting in early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. It is important to remember how early we are. Even Bitcoin, right? Still early. Bitcoin maybe is maturing into a teenager now, and getting that teenage credit and being told that, yeah, you're on your way to being ready to be an adult. But it feels like the rest of crypto is still a kid, right? And still has so much room to grow. So much room to grow. Leah, Max, incredible episode. Really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I got to remind everybody listening in, as both Max and Leah said, none of today's episode was financial advice. I am not your financial advisor. Leah is not your financial advisor. Max is not your financial advisor. Investing is risky, and you should only invest what you're prepared to lose. And you should always take time to do your own research and think before you make any investments. If you need help with any of your investments, you should subscribe to the Milk Road newsletter. You hit the link in the show notes, and you can subscribe today. And as I said at the beginning of the episode, I'm so proud of y'all for surviving the dip, and I want to make sure you guys get a free t-shirt. So sign up for Milk Road Pro today to make sure that you continue to survive future dips, because there will be more. And I want to make sure you stay in this space to become the investor that you dream of. Thanks for listening, y'all. We'll see you back again tomorrow. Have a wicked awesome day.